This is a situation I've had to deal with many times before, and it can be quite tricky to get this right, particularly if you don't have the right equipment. Now, if you check out this shot, this is Geeta, who is one of the crew on the job I'm working on at the moment. I'm in the south of France, and what we need to do is we need to put some light onto Geeta. At the moment, we've got a beautiful exterior shot, and we've got a fantastic silhouette, but what we want is to see all the detail on Geeta and not to have a silhouette. So I'm going to run through the process of how I deal with this, and it's the sort of thing that I've had to do many times, and I've had good results, I've had fantastic results, and I've had terrible results. So I've been through it all. So let me show you some of what I've learned. I'm going to be working with two lights. Now, one of the lights is a DLED4 by Dedolight. The other is a Tech Pro Felloni, which is an LED light, a panel LED light. So I'll turn on my light, first light, put that onto Geeta. Now, if you just look at the background, you'll probably see that if I don't position it right, we end up with a reflection behind her, which is a real problem. So be really careful with the positioning of the light so that we can actually have a clean shot behind our subject. And you can see I've got quite a lot of light on Geeta now, so I'm sure you actually get to see some of the details. And if I switch on this light over here, which is more of a hard light, and just dial it in, you'll see that the detail's starting to show on Geeta. Now, it's far from perfect. It's underexposed, but in post-production, I can do a lot to make that better. Now, immediately looking at that, we got a problem, which is the LED panel, the Felloni, I can see camera right of Geeta. So I've got to move that light to get it out the way. Okay, one way to do it is actually to use the talent to obscure the reflection, which is pretty good. And if I bring the light closer, if I can just keep it out of shot, okay, and you can see the reflection poking out just camera right. So I would probably bring it right the way around and put it on Geeta and even pull it back. But the problem with bringing the light further back is we lose a bit of intensity. But the reflection is still there. So bring it back around this side and let's see what we got. Okay, that's starting to look quite good. And one thing I also tend to do is I will film the scene with the lights off as well as the lights on, and that way if you do see any reflections in the shot, you can actually mask it out. So that's a bit of a big deal. So let me just tell you what's going on in my lighting setup here. So we've got one light here, which is the Felloni. We've got the DLED4 here. Now the DLED4 is a focusing light. So if I just back it off, you'll see I can spread it or I can focus it nice and tight. Now that is really focused and looking pretty bad, really. So you don't want anything as hard as that. But you do need light on the subject, and there we go. We now have the light on the subject, and I believe I can work with that. Let me just reframe a bit. It's still looking very much silhouetted. If I open up the iris, you can see that I've got more detail on Geeta, and that's actually acceptable, but I know a little trick. In fact, I know a couple of tricks that are going to dramatically improve this. So if I just switch off the cameras for a minute, okay, now you can see we've got more detail on Geeta, but the image is looking very washed out. Now the reason for this is I'm using S-Log. I'm shooting on a PMW F3. This mode S-Log is actually fantastic. However, it's not exclusive to the PMW F3. It's also found on the PMW F5, the F55, the new AS7 by Sony. They call it S-Log 2 on the later ones. But you can see I've got a lot more detail there. And by color correcting that image, I know I can make that work. And then just to take it one step further, if I use a plugin for Final Cut 10, which is made by Coremelt, which is called SliceX, I can pull the background down behind Geeta, and I can actually raise the exposure on Geeta and bring all that detail back into Geeta's face, which is absolutely wonderful and really what we want to do. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into shot alongside Geeta. Now, the light's on Geeta more than me, but if I just spread the light coming from the DLED4, I might get a bit on me. Okay, so you should see both of us now looking reasonably decent or probably underexposed, but then I can fix the exposure. So what you're seeing now is S-Log uncorrected, and now I'll switch to the corrected version. And I need to say something else, which is skin tones make a very big difference. So if you're using someone with light skin, you've got more chance of getting an exposure against a hot background than you have for someone with darker skin. Now, Geeta's skin isn't that dark, it's more olive. And I don't know the difference between my skin and hers exactly, but I'm sure you can see it on screen. So this is a big deal, and it's a situation we have to deal with all the time. And the way I've made it work is with the Felloni panel on one side, the DLED 4 on the other, switching on S-Log on the camera, which gives you a greater dynamic range, does a lot for you in color correction, and beyond that, using the SliceX filter made by Coremelt. So these are wonderful techniques that can make a big difference. And I just have to say, Geeta, thank you so much for being the subject on this shoot. Fantastic.
Pleasure.
Great. All right, it's been a pleasure. So that's just a little bit of what I know and how to get out of this sort of situation, which I seem to encounter quite a lot. Okay, just to show you the lighting setup from the other side. So this is the Felloni, switch it on, and this is DLED 4. Both of these are dimmable lights, which is absolutely fantastic. I don't know how I can possibly ever live without dimmable lights again now that I've used them. And aside from that, this light is bicolour, which is fantastic. This one is daylight only, but I'm shooting in daylight, so daylight is what I need.